Who are these people?
First story tonight, we're going to look at the IDF a little bit. So shout out to Nuno for, well, essentially giving me permission to share his podcast, or at least so many of you might know him or seen him on Twitter. Please go follow him. I'll put his Twitter in the chat later, and then his link to his podcast is actually is in the description. As I said earlier, we're going to play a little bit of it in him talking about, he actually talked to former IDF soldiers on his travels, so we are going to listen to him share about that. Gotcha. And he actually goes into detail regarding the IDF, so definitely listen to his podcast. But I actually wanted to supplement that with this, I guess you can call it a documentary from Dina Jacouri. She's an American journalist. She works with AG+. Okay. And I think she did this back in 2020, I believe.
Right.
But she's Palestinian, and her family, they're now based in California now. But just due to, the Israeli occupation overtaking the West Bank, yep, which is where the family has been based for generations, her father has not been back to Hebron since he moved.
Gotcha.
So she actually went to record what Hebron looks like now, as the settler community there is basically overtaking, Hebron to, obviously just to the detriment of the Palestinian community that has been living there.
Yep.
We're not going to show the whole thing. I'm going to pull a few clips from the documentary. It's actually well worth a watch. I think just to kind of give. I think the whole thing is about 30 minutes, so yep. I think I'm going to play like 3 or 4 clips from this.
Cool.
And I think it's actually well worthwhile to watch the whole thing in full. But so basically, this first clip is where she is traveling into Hebron, and she has all her papers and everything, and then she comes into contact with the IDF.
Papers, please. Essentially,
yeah, essentially. So
we should play Papers, Please on stream one of these days. I think you would find it interesting. It's a video game. It's essentially like you play as the person who asks for the papers in a fictional fascist state. Very interesting stuff. Not easy either. But anyway.
Right. So yeah, so Dina's getting her contact, and she gets bombarded by the IDF. So let's watch.
Go through. Because I'm Palestinian, I'm not allowed to enter parts of the old city. So I'm meeting former Israeli soldiers who I hope will help me access my family's hometown.
Hi, how are you, Ori? Nice to meet you, I'm Dina.
Ori and Joel are with the Israeli anti-occupation group Breaking the Silence. They used to serve in the Israeli army, but now they give tours of Hebron to expose the reality of how Israel treats Palestinians.
Come here.
But before they could even start showing me around, this happened.
היא אזרחית ארצות הברית ועיתונאית, כן? רק שתדעו. היא אזרחית ארצות הברית ועיתונאית.
אין שום בעיה, הוא צילם עמדה ביטחונית, הוא צריך למחוק את הסרטונים האלה.
אני לא צילמתי את העמדה, צילמתי רק אותה.
לא, צילמת את עמדה. זה לא משנה, אם היא עמדה ליד העמדה, אתה מוחק...
דבר ראשון, אתה מפריע לנו בעבודה, בוא תעמוד שם עם המצלמה. דבר ראשון.
עכשיו דוחף אותי.
יופי, דוחף אותו, כרגע הוא מפריע לי בעבודה.
My Palestinian film crew, who have the proper credentials, are sadly used to experiencing this kind of nationalistic harassment and taunting.
So I've been in the old city for about 5 minutes and we were already stopped by... We literally just got here and a bunch of soldiers stopped us, started yelling at us, started harassing my cameraman. They just asked to see our IDs. I showed my US passport.
to all of a sudden have like 6 or 7 armed Israeli soldiers just swarm you. It's honestly really upsetting that this is how you get welcome to your own home city. The former soldiers I'm spending the day with say this is a typical scene.
When you consider the fact that they grew up in Israeli society, they have education and media and the political system, all of those elements are telling them that Arabs are scary, you know, Palestinians are bad. And then they get an opportunity when they're in the army, they have power in their hands, and it's not surprising that they use it.
Finally, the soldiers give us back our IDs.
Let's continue, right? It's a very classic demonstration of one of the elements of the occupation, which is complete arbitrariness, right? And every soldier in the occupied territories has the authority on his own decision to detain anyone for 3 hours. Yeah? So we were not delayed here for 3 hours, and we are going to continue our tour, obviously, but it's an example.
Yeah, so she's Palestinian descent, and yeah, that's what happened to her immediately when she enters her family's hometown. You want to say something? Like, you're on mute, Reef, I think.
No, I'm good. I mean, it's just, you know, we've seen these time after time with this particular area of the world, right? Like,
yeah.
You know, if you watch any of the documentaries, you know, I forget the name of it and exactly how many cameras. I think it's like 7 cameras is the name of the documentary, something like that. You know, this one, there's a load of them that people should be going to go watch. I'm sure people will put them in the chat. Like, there's like 3 or 4 that are like kind of well known for showing exactly that, you know? So, but yeah.
Right.
What you got?
So let's continue. So this next clip, again, this is same video. So Dina heads into a home where she has an interview with a child regarding, you know, what's happening in her hometown, and she actually got arrested. She's 13. She got arrested by the IDF at some point before this interview. So yeah, let's watch this clip.
Yep.
This is kind of a common sight here in the old city. There's a Palestinian family that lives at the end of this alleyway. Above them is an Israeli settlement, and because the settlers throw garbage down at them, they have to put these nets here to protect them.
This is where I was when they arrested me. You were right here. I was right here when they arrested me. I was exactly
here. The family
here.
at the end of the alley is the Sidrs. Just a few weeks before I arrived to Hebron, nearby settlers accused their 13-year-old daughter Selwa of picking a knife up off the ground.
If she won't tell me, hold on. If she won't tell me
where this is, I'm taking her now.
Last chance. Check my pockets. I don't have a knife.
She says she doesn't have a knife. Lie, you have the knife. Too bad she won't say where it is. For all this, I take her now. She'll be with me. Come on, bring me a zip tie. Bring me a zip tie. They arrested me and took me away and interrogated me. They kept me for an hour before letting me go. It took me for a long time. Are you scared they'll arrest you again? I feel like they're going to arrest me while I'm sleeping in the middle of the night.
So we're standing here and I'm talking to her in front of her home, and every time we hear a noise she looks up, and I asked her, are you afraid the settlers are throwing something down at you? And she said, yeah. Yeah,
it happens all the time.
She said,
are you afraid the settlers are throwing something down at you? And she said, yeah.
Because Because it happens a lot where they throw things down.
كتير إنه بيرموا عليكم.
كتير بصير. يعني إذا شفناهم بيلعبوا.
If we see them playing, they throw rocks at us.
خلاص بدهم يرمونا، بدهم يرموا علينا حجر، وإحنا بنقعد نتفرج عليهم.
And we sit here and watch them play.
ولاد المستوطنين.
طبعاً.
The settler kids? Yes, the settler kids.
المستوطنين. يعني أخي.
My little brother told me, wow, look how nice their toys are, how they play. Let's go play with them.
يطلع محلى ألعابهم. كيف بيلعبوا، وإحنا نفس خلينا ننزل عندهم نلعب، قلت لك كيف ننزل.
I told them, how would we do that? This is an occupation.
هذا احتلال. كمان إحنا ما بنقدرش يعني ننزل بالمرة.
We're stuck at home 24/7. It's like a prison.
نساعد في الدار، يعني زي باعتبار السجن.
Just talking to her, it's really you don't feel safe at all. Like it's not a life that people should or can accept.
Yep. I mean, standard occupation stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like kids behind chicken wire and, you know, I mean, they haven't given them a nice striped uniform to wear, but close enough, you know? So, like, they're not going to get that pajama movie that the other ones got, you know? So, no striped pajamas.
Yeah, I think it's kind of, yeah, I think I just found, like, when we were doing some research for and because I was thinking about doing this for the last few days, and then I stumbled upon this, and I think the reality of this situation, well, this is in the West Bank, this isn't Gaza.
Yeah.
So obviously Gaza is a lot more dramatic right now with the bombing and all that, but that's not to say, you know, everything in the West Bank is a little bit more subdued, but it's still the same shit that's happening there too.
I mean, this is a place with, bro, AI facial recognition robots attached to like 50 caliber machine guns on fences for children. Like,
right.
What kind of dystopian nightmare prison is that? You know, so
right.
Like,
and this is a child, a 13-year-old,
yeah,
who is aware of her reality, and she's basically like, I live in a prison, and I know of no other life but this. And so I think this was kind of powerful. Just, we don't hear from Palestinians, I think, a lot. And I know we've been trying to have more Palestinian voices to kind of share more of their stories, because we really don't hear it at all in mainstream media at all. Maybe like every once in a while, maybe if we're lucky, like in the context of a Westerner who's been there, but very rarely do we hear from Palestinians directly.
Yeah.
So
especially right now.
Right. So I think this is kind of important to kind of show this, to kind of hear what they were saying. Even, I think, again, this was done 3 years ago. That even prior to this conflict in Gaza, that this has been an ongoing issue that has more or less been silent, you know, in terms of the media. So this next, so I have 2 more clips after this. So this one, Dina is talking to the tour guide, and she's basically asking him, you know, what happened. You know, again, this is Hebron, her family's hometown. So she basically was, because Hebron didn't used to be this way. At least when her father was growing up in this town, it wasn't like this. So
it wasn't occupied.
Right.
Like,
so what happened? So this is what she's asking
this gentleman,
the tour guide, that she is with. And again, he is a former IDF soldier.
IDF. Okay.
So why do you give these tours?
It's extremely important to show people what the occupation looks like, because this word is very vague for most people, right? Occupation. And when you see here, when you walk on those segregated streets, you cannot ignore the reality. And I believe that it's my responsibility as someone who took part in it. The minimum that I can do is to try and show people what I was sent to do. I believe that any decent human being who will see this will want this to end.
Yeah. So he just basically gave a description of why he gives tours. And, you know, and just giving people the reality of what their lives are like and I think shout out to Ori, you know, for displaying that kind of courage to actually admit, you know, I was complicit in this, I was a part of this, but I saw the damage that I was doing and I wanted to stop, and I want to make sure that I am helping others know the reality too, by showing you, you know. And I think that's the issue. And I think we've talked to Indy, you know, who is Jewish and has gone on these tours, you know, or he's known people who've gone on these tours, that, you know, when they go into like the Israeli parts, you know, they don't see this or they don't talk about this. So the idea that we're able to kind of see it and, you know, but to kind of you have this be exposed that this is the other side in terms of the occupation in Palestine, you know, I think it's good. But again, we don't see this at all. All right, so the last one. So Dina actually calls her dad because she was looking for their family home, but it's in settler territory, so she's not. I think she was able to go, but she was showing her dad because, as she says in this, her father has not been back since it was occupied. He might have been back 3 times total. So she gives him a call from Hebron. He lives in California, to kind of show him and just see, do you know where you are? Do you remember all? He was kind of sharing this with her. So right now we're going to see a little bit of the phone call, and then he talked to Ori, her tour guide, as well. So you can go ahead.
My dad wanted to talk to Ori.
Hello, my friend.
Hi, nice to meet you.
I'm glad you are for peace. When counting on people like you to expose the lie.
I really hope you can be here and visit your childhood home at some point. Really, really hope.
You know what I do? I just keep looking at the pictures over and over again. I am physically in San Francisco, but spiritually and emotionally always in Hebron.
I'm curious, how did you feel watching me talk to my dad and then speaking to him yourself?
Like sad, responsible, that this is what the place that I grew up in, that I was so proud of when I was a child. This is what we're actually doing to people. And it feels horrible to feel that.
What most haunts you and your conscience about what you did in your time as a soldier?
For me, it's the routine way we control the Palestinians, right? A Palestinian can wake up in the morning and not know if he will be at work on time, go to sleep, not know if soldiers will invade his home. We basically control the most simple and basic elements of life.
It's designed to break down the population of Palestinians and show them who's in charge and humiliate them on a daily basis.
Exactly. How can we make 2.5 million Palestinians in the West Bank to feel that they cannot lift their head up? We will make them understand that we control their lives. The segregated roads and the settlements and so forth, they exist all around the occupied territories. Military activity, home invasions, patrols, digital surveillance, they exist here and they exist all over the West Bank. The difference in Hebron is that in a very short walk, we can see examples of all of it.
All of it.
All of it.
We saw all of it.
Yeah. I think I said this to you maybe yesterday. This is like the Palestinian version of Jim Crow.
Except yeah, I mean, that's been happening. Now it's even worse than that,
right.
But yeah.
Right, yeah, but maybe now worse.
Much worse.
Much worse. But, I mean, just what Ori was saying.
Yeah.
You know, like, how familiar does that sound to hear in dealing with the police here. You know,
well,
like,
I mean, they kind of get their playbook from these guys. So
right, exactly.
And
but,
I noticed,
you know,
I noticed that these are ex IDF people. I mean, their PTSD must be real. Must make them hard to, you know, do campaigns or something like that. But
right. Well,
they're out here, like literally going, "This is how it works. This is what we do. We shouldn't do what we're doing."
Right.
And I'm sure they're risking all sorts of career and life and like to do that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, right. I mean, good for them. I hope they're still around. I hate to be that cynical, but, you know, like, IDF got plenty of bullets in that video, so, you know, I'm just saying, you know, right. Those fucking, those Tavors know what they're doing.
So we listened to these IDF soldiers, and they, you know, they're atoning,
yes,
for their actions in terms of, you know, the things that they did while under that regime. So what we're gonna do now is, again, this is our friend Nuno Marques. He just started. This is his podcast that he produced on Bugle, which I believe is subsidiary of Substack, I believe, in Europe. That's where he's from. He's based in Portugal, but he lives. He's French. He's French of Arab descent. His family is originally from Syria and Egypt, if I remember correctly, from what he told me.
Yep.
But he wanted, and he's been very active on Twitter in terms of sharing and kind of communicating. He does know people in Palestine that he's in direct contact with, or trying to be in direct contact with, in terms of what's happening. So he's been very prolific on Twitter, just sharing a lot of stuff regarding to, you know, what's happening over there, and then, you know, just tweeting out a lot of the stuff, you know, that we kind of talk about in independent media here. So, as I said, his the link to his podcast is in the description. We're not going to play the whole thing because it's about 25 minutes.
Right.
But I did want to play a little part of what he was saying in terms of the IDF and the experience that he had. So kind of counter to what we heard from Ori, his experience when he connected with former IDF soldiers traveling, that he met up with these guys. So we'll have Nuno kind of share that, and then we'll talk about it.
Forward to today. We watch every day as IDF commits atrocities after atrocities, war crimes after war crimes, bombing hospitals, bombing schools, dancing on TikTok videos after they've drone bombed a UN school, making videos mocking dead Palestinians. I've always wondered, right from a very young age, as to what drives this bloodlust that IDF soldiers have. Right? They're killing children, they're killing women, they're assaulting women. What drives them to, most of them are conscripts. You are forced to join the military. I mean, imagine, you survive the Holocaust. I mean, a tragedy of epic levels in Europe due to European anti-Semitism. Then you come to Israel looking for a safe haven for Jews. And then you're forced to basically ethnically cleanse another population. What drives that mentality? What drives that insatiable need for bloodlust? I've always wondered about that. So, back in 2017, I was traveling across northern India, And I was visiting this town, very famous for international travelers, called Kasol. Kasol is very famous for marijuana and opium, so a lot of international travelers are like attracted to the place. And people are generally there to party for bonfire camps and bonfire parties. So I was there too at one such party and camp. And I saw these three guys who were just like sitting all by themselves, whereas the others were just like having fun. I walk up to them and I sit next to them and I ask them, "Hey, where are you from?" And the three of them say they're from Israel. But from their accents, you could tell they're not Israeli. I mean, they're not from the region, if you know what I mean. Two of them were French, and one was American. And then they, upon asking, they told me they were like second generation. So their parents migrated from France and America respectively, and they came to Israel on birthright citizenship. And now these are the kids. Second generation. Then they later on revealed that all three of them were in IDF, and all three of them had recently quit IDF. I began talking to one of the French guys, French Israeli guys. So I was asking him, I was just like talking to him, and he told me that he quit because he couldn't really take it mentally anymore. And every time he looked at me to talk to me, I could see his dead eyes, cold, dead eyes. There was no emotion. It was just blank. And upon further talking, he revealed that during 2014 Operation Protective Edge, he had killed 3 children. He shot them dead. The way he was talking, I happened to ask him, "Hey, you know, it's been 3 years. You were in the military, now you're not. How do you feel about that?" He looked at me dead in my eyes and said, "I had to kill them. I had no other option. They would have killed me otherwise." And I was appalled and shocked. I asked him, "What do you mean you had to kill them? Did they have like knives, guns, what?" He said no, they didn't have any knives or guns. They were just like 6 or 7-year-old children returning from school. But he had to kill them. He said, if I wouldn't kill them, they would have killed me. I said, "But they had no weapons. How can they kill you?" Like, "No, they would have killed me." He was convinced. He looked me right in the eye and told me they would have killed him. 6-year-old children would have killed him without any weapons, nothing. I'm sure a lot of you people would have seen similar instances captured on video. I remember this very famous video from a Quds network. There's this 12-year-old schoolgirl in a hijab. She's walking towards her school with a backpack, and these IDF soldiers stop her. When she tries to walk away, they stop her again, and one of them kicks her in the chest. When she falls down, she still tries to reach for her bag, and the other IDF soldier just shoots her dead. In their testimony, these soldiers said, in their testimony to the press, actually, they told the press that, they thought that she had a knife. She was reaching for a knife from her backpack. But when Hayats investigated, she had no weapons in her backpack. She just had books. So again, what warped indoctrination takes place to turn young people, young settlers, into these zombies that indiscriminately want to kill all Arabs? Like, what turns them into these zombies that think 6-year-old kids, 12-year-old kids are going to kill them in all their body armor and, you know, all their protective gear. So last year,
well, couple of things here, Bear. That is called the amygdala hijack, by the way. See, luckily, when you've been around jiu-jitsu long enough, Care Bear, like I have, you end up meeting Brazilians and in turn Israelis. Would you like to know why? Brazilian part's easy. It's Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? The Israelis is because they learn that shit. Okay? Particularly members of the IDF, right? Then they train that to cops, right? So there's certain terminology to all this. Like they even know how this works. Okay? This is your flight or flight response getting fucked up. Okay?
Right.
We train American police forces to
the same way.
I'm gonna go a layer deeper. There's a famous talk by a British military person when he talked about the difference between British military training and American military training. Granted, our police force is military trained by the IDF, and we're all passing notes. Okay? Is that you are allowed to, like, the British, they have to be shot upon before they're allowed to shoot back. Right?
Well,
that's the rule.
British police don't have guns, so.
Yes, right?
They don't have
The Israelis, and in turn our military and police forces, are allowed to fire if they feel their life is threatened. Okay? So when we stop prefrontal cortex thinking, right? We've lost the ability for actual reasoning, right? Our adrenaline spikes through the amygdala. Our amygdala takes over. That's your lizard brain. That's your, I'm afraid of this space, I have to get out. That's like when you're, all the phobias, it's going through that. Right?
Right.
So it's like, this is why police fire on unarmed people all the time too. It's the same thing. You know?
But also keep in mind, like, you're enlisted in the IDF when you were in college, like, yes. To give an idea, like, right. You're 18, 19, 20 years old. Like,
and it turns into us versus them. There is people
right.
in, so there's civvies, and there's everyone else.
Right. Like, so these are kids, essentially, being trained, and they may not have, and imagine, like, the propaganda they're hearing.
Yes.
You know, prior to all of this just being like, as Ori said, we've been trained or we've been conditioned to believe that Palestinians are bad.
Which this goes even further, because it's not just standard propaganda. This is religious propaganda on top of that.
Right. Right.
And centuries of it, not just like this centuries. Like, this is, you're afraid for your life because you think the Egyptian is out to get you like he got Moses. Like, it goes back that far.
Right.
Like, you know, so, and this is what you were told at Temple. And this is what you were told, like, and what do you think happens to the Palestinians? You don't think that's generational trauma doing what they're doing?
Right.
Like, yeah. So
it's, but I think I think it's kind of interesting to kind of make this connection between, because there's Ori who recognized what he did.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and you could, well, I'm not sure if he had therapy, but I think like he had something kind of clicked with him. Well, all of them do, like,
yeah.
but something clicked with him that he made the, oh, this is wrong. Like, and I'm curious to know, and he doesn't say.
Miko Peled is the son of a general in the IDF. He was able to figure that out. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I wonder with Ori how he was able to figure it. But
I think it's just
Nuno's case.
How did people in Vietnam figure it out? You live it, you experience it, and you have no other option. So,
but in Nuno's case, with the people, the former soldiers that he talked to, they were still in the sense of, yeah, they had regret, but in terms of, can't even say they regretted it. It was just like, as Nuno said, I had no choice. You know, otherwise children would kill me. So not to say it's confusing, but it's it's not as evident as to why there, I guess maybe it was just too much, the trauma.
It's on top of like, it's past trauma affecting that decision too, where it's like, you've seen your buddies get shanked because they weren't paying attention enough, right? Like, he didn't leave someone at the under end of his barrel and things got too close. And, you know, like they've seen that happen. Someone that they've been in camp with for, I don't know, 6-7 months. They formed bonds through the trauma of boot camp, which is its own brainwashing situation. Like, you know, so, and this is stuff that they've dealt with usually earlier than that. Right? Where it's like, even Britain, even us, we have the Boy Scouts, you end up in JROTC. Like, you know, it's part of it to make it's you versus whatever person that they point you towards, you know, and you automatically think the worst out of everyone and you will treat it that way. So, and then when they do make a mistake, they compartmentalize and they tell them to push it down and suppress it. Like, it's fucked up. It's generational trauma times 1,000.
I just kind of wonder, and I wonder if Nuno knows this. I think with the IDF soldiers that because they essentially were partying. So I just wonder if that's kind of a subtle way of escape in terms of what they did, and like, oh, I am just going to, and you know, like, God knows if there were like alcohol/drugs involved. You know, like where they were at, possibly.
I mean, bro, you want to go back to like Apocalypse Now, and like, I mean, it's the same kind of crap we did in different places, you know. So, but you end up with they're out there barbecuing after they burned half a fucking jungle. Like, you know, it's morale and brainwashing, and you know,
and I think this is, you can argue this is almost kind of cultish in the terms of.
Well, we'll get to it in a bit after what we did in Afghanistan and the Australians did in Afghanistan with what David McBride talked about. It's worse than you think. You know?
Yeah, but it's just so significant that these are kids. And that's the thing that you have to remember. Like, these are not grown-ass men like Reef and I. Like, many of, at least when they're starting out, they are just barely out of high school. You know? So you have kids.
MC Abdul.
No.
I'll show you him after this if you've not seen him before. He's probably, I would say, now maybe in his like early preteens, like 12, 13 maybe. But when he first started doing what he was doing, he's a rapper, talks about Palestine. At like, I don't know, he might have been 8, you know, like when I first saw him. So, like, that's just their end, which is why you have, like, I saw people, you know, they send rockets over to Israel and it's, you know, they're happy like children. And it's because it's generational trauma on their end too. So, you know, it's eye for an eye for centuries ends up with this.
Right. And well, I prepped this before the DC March yesterday, but you saw it there. The idea that I'll say it, the Zionists there were calling for no ceasefire.
Yes.
You know, and just seeing clips since of the
well, I think that
sense of
that might have clicked for some. I saw a few of the people who would normally not say jack shit, like be like, "Ooh, that's bad, guys," and it's all in the vein of like, "You guys are fucking this up." It's like all you got to do is not be dicks, and Israel's ours, and y'all are fucking it up.
But you've seen that. I haven't necessarily seen that. I've seen
Milano,
people kind of double
I'm saying
down.
Specifically. But I've also seen your side too.
Yeah,
so,
I've seen more people kind of double down and being like, yeah. So, and I'm like, you know, we talk about white supremacy in terms of, you know, people in your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
You know, but like,
well, let's talk about the fucking controlled ops out here who because the bare minimum of this issue should be easy for you to take. Should be. It's very common sense, like genocide bad. Like, you don't need that many brain cells to figure this one out. That, like, you're seeing them very easily be like, oh, yeah, I'm for it. If it gets me some audience, if it gets me some, you know, any credibility right now, I'll take. You know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of them. Like, make that list yourself, you know, but I don't know. I'm seeing it. You're seeing it. It's like there's people more than willing to jump on this issue, you know, so, but be careful. Keep your eyes on a swivel out here is all I'm saying, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's just shocking. And I said this on Twitter yesterday that it's shocking that we're at the point in our livelihoods that we have people, and the irony is, especially for Jews, that your families went through the Holocaust in Europe, and yet you're justifying what's happening to Palestinians. And this is kind of what we talked about regarding peace versus liberation last week with Kwame Ture. Like, you want that peace for yourselves in terms of you want to come in and essentially steal the land of indigenous groups that have lived there for generations, and you're putting them through trauma, and you don't give a shit. But we're supposed to feel sorry for you in terms of the Holocaust. And we'll get more into that later in my next segment. But it's just kind of like, it does not compute with me at all. And so, but I think in terms of the IDF, I can't fault them. I cannot fault these soldiers because, again, this is all propaganda. This is all essentially brainwashing.
I mean, you should, at this point, know better. You know, you can figure it out.
But if you're in an environment where that's what you see and that's what you're told and that's what you're taught, like, and you're kind of isolated from knowing another way.
Yes. Right. Like
then
a particular youth group. with blonde hair and blue eyes. Like, we've been through this before. Like, we've done this, you know. Like, are they complicit? The ones working those camps, are they complicit? Like, to what end can we give them benefit of the doubt, you know? Like,
I mean, I argue that these soldiers are victims,
yes,
too, in terms of
yep,
the environment that,
no, I
again,
agree,
is generational, but, you know, that has been essentially plotted and schemed, you know, in terms of control. So it's not just control of the Palestinians, it's really control over the Israelis too, because the idea, and just doing the research that I do, like, anyone who refuses, unless you have good reason not to be involved in the IDF, is shunned.
Well,
so this is...
I'm just also going to be consistent in my, like, just because it was like, that's not an excuse. Like, that's, yes.
No. No.
Yeah.
No, I'm not excusing it, but I can understand it in terms of...
Yep. Same with Hamas,
you know,
right?
Again,
like,
right.
Same thing.
Yeah. And especially given for many of them that they're children.
Yep.
Being asked to kill. Not asked, ordered to kill. In the name of, again, as you said, religion. That standing that, oh, this land belongs to us. We have a birthright to the land.
And culture and fear. And yeah, there's a definitely manipulation, you know, so, but luckily, you know, I think information's a big part of that, right? The ones who control that narrative. So this is why stuff like this happens.